I wasn't supposed to be at the gym that day. Wednesday's normally my long shift, and Rachel always finished her workouts before I got home. But that afternoon, a job site fell through, contractor forgot to schedule permits, so I wrapped up around 4:15. I figured, why not swing by the gym and pick her up? It'd be a nice surprise. I even stopped at the sandwich shop on 12th to grab her favorite turkey bacon wrap, no onions, extra mustard. That was the kind of stuff we used to do. Little thoughtful things. Keep the rhythm alive, you know? It was cold outside. One of those weird spring days where the sun's out but the wind's cutting through your jacket like November. I pulled into the gym parking lot around 5:45. Rachel's silver CRV was there, parked in her usual crooked way, always a little tilted to the right like the alignment was off. I smiled to myself. Just seeing her car gave me this dumb, content feeling, like a dog waiting by the door. I didn't text her to let her know I was coming in. Figured I'd walk in, catch her finishing up on the treadmill or stretching out in the yoga corner. Maybe laugh at her flushed cheeks. Maybe sneak in a hug. Stuff we used to do when we first started dating. I walked through those glass doors like I had 100 times before. Gym smelled the same: rubber mats, protein powder, sweat, and cleaning spray. That synthetic, post-effort smell. The front desk guy nodded at me, said, "What's up, boss?" and I nodded back. I didn't see Rachel right away, so I started toward the weight area, figuring she might be doing some deadlifts or kettlebell stuff. She'd been into those lately. But then I heard laughter coming from one of the side studios, the ones with the mirrored walls and blue exercise balls stacked in the corner. I turned toward the sound, still smiling, still holding that sandwich bag like a fool. I saw her through the glass. Rachel, my wife of 9 years. The woman who once made me feel like the luckiest man alive. She wasn't stretching. She wasn't lifting. She was kissing a man. He was taller than me. Younger, maybe by 5 years. Dark hair, strong jaw, wearing one of those sleeveless hoodies that scream, "Look at me." His back was to the mirror, and Rachel had her arms around his neck like she was trying to hold herself upright. It wasn't just a kiss. It was slow, intentional. Like the kind of kiss you give someone you miss before bed or after a weekend apart. Her eyes were closed. His hands were on her waist. Their bodies pressed together, not in some sloppy, panicked way, but like this was routine. I stood there, just outside the room, frozen. I didn't move, didn't breathe, just watched. My mind didn't race. It slowed down. I noticed everything. The way her fingers curled into the back of his hoodie, the little tilt of her head, the way her foot lifted just slightly off the mat. That's how she used to kiss me. After cookouts. Before we turned in for the night. In the kitchen when she thought no one was watching. I felt something inside me stretch. Not break. Just stretch so far it stopped feeling like part of me. And then, I turned around. I didn't say anything. Didn't bang on the glass or throw the sandwich at them or start yelling like some unhinged daytime TV idiot. I just walked out. Quiet. Calm. Sandwich still in hand. The front desk guy nodded at me again and said, "Have a good one." I don't think I said a word back. I got in my truck. Sat for a minute with the engine running. The sandwich sat next to me on the passenger seat like some stupid punchline. I stared at the dashboard, not blinking, while the radio quietly played one of those 90s rock songs we used to belt in the car together. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Just sat. There's a certain kind of silence your body hits when it's done feeling shocked but hasn't started feeling angry yet. It's like being in a plane that's lost power. You're still flying, but you know it's going down. That was me. I drove home the long way. Didn't even take the highway. Just let the roads wind under me while my hands stayed at 10 and 2 like a goddamn driver's ed student. I pulled into the driveway at exactly 6:33, turned off the ignition, and sat there until the porch light came on. I didn't say a word when I got home that night. Rachel was already back by the time I pulled in. I could hear her inside, humming in the kitchen, the same little tune she always whistled when she thought she was alone. The lights were on. The house smelled like garlic bread. Her coat was hanging up neatly by the door, just like she always insisted I do with mine. Nothing was out of place, except me. I walked in like nothing happened. Kissed her on the forehead like I always did, even muttered, "Smells amazing," when I passed her by. She gave me this look, kind of soft, like she was happy to see me, and I wanted to ask her right then, was it worth it? But I didn't. Rage? That's a young man's mistake. You let it out too fast, it burns everything, including you. I wasn't going to explode. I was going to wait. So I ate dinner with her that night. I asked about her day. I listened while she talked about work and how the copy machine kept jamming. and how Kathy in accounting messed up the quarterly numbers again. I nodded, smiled when I needed to. She had no idea. That night in bed, she curled into me like she always did. I stared at the ceiling. The fan spun. My mind didn't. It was focused. The next morning, while she was in the shower, I sat at the kitchen table and made a list. Not on my phone, paper and pen. Real ink. There's something solid about handwriting when everything else feels like it's falling apart. The list had 2 names on it. Jack Flynn, attorney. Steve Lott, private investigator. Jack was a guy I knew from back in college. We weren't close friends, but he helped me once with a contract dispute when I was first getting my business off the ground. Sharp guy? The kind of man who wore quiet suits and kept paper copies of everything. I called him first. He didn't ask many questions. Just said, "Let's set a meeting." Steve was someone I found through a friend. Discreet, older, not some 20-something with a drone and a TikTok. He'd been doing this for 20 years and still had a landline. My kind of guy. When I called, I gave him the short version. I need to know who, where, and how often. No drama, just the truth. He said he'd get started that day. Meanwhile, I went on with my life. Work, grocery runs, trash on Tuesday night, smiles over spaghetti. If Rachel noticed anything different, she didn't show it. Maybe that's what hurt most, how easy it was for her to keep living like nothing happened. Or maybe I was just getting better at pretending than she was. 10 days later, Steve called me. I was in the hardware store looking at paint samples for the garage when his number popped up. "You were right," he said. "You want the files emailed or printed?" "Printed," I said. "Always printed." That evening, I met him in the parking lot of a diner off Route 12. He handed me a manila envelope like we were exchanging spy documents. I didn't even open it until I got home. Inside were photos, time-stamped, labeled, Caleb and Rachel, together at a coffee shop near downtown. Sitting close, smiling, his hand on hers. Another set from outside the gym, him leaning into her car window, her laughing, tossing her hair like a high schooler on prom night. One photo showed them walking into the same hotel 2 blocks from where Rachel used to get her hair done. That one hit me in the gut harder than the rest. The PI also included printouts of their social media activity. Caleb was smarter online, but not smart enough. A few vague posts that lined up with Rachel's sudden girls' nights. I checked the timestamps against my calendar. Sure enough, they matched. That's when it started feeling real. Like not just a bad dream I could shake off. This was methodical. Routine. Not an accident. That Friday night, I was sitting next to Rachel on the couch, some rerun of that cooking show she liked playing on the TV. She was on her phone, thumbs working quick. I glanced over, and I saw it. A text pop up from Caleb. Still thinking about earlier. "Your trouble." She didn't see me notice. She kept typing. I turned my head back to the screen and nodded along like I cared about the lemon tart recipe they were explaining. I didn't say a word. Not because I was weak. Not because I was scared. Because I was patient. I took pictures of the texts later while she slept. Backed them up. Printed them. I slid everything into a folder. Photos, text logs, receipts, all of it. Labeled it Truth, and put it in the bottom drawer of my tool cabinet behind an old socket set she'd never touched. I was building my case. Not for court. For me. Because when I burn a bridge, I make damn sure the other side has no boat. The gym was quieter than usual that morning. It was one of those cold, gray Saturdays where everything felt like it moved a step slower. Rain had passed through overnight, left the pavement slick and shining. I pulled into the lot a little after 6 a.m. The sun was barely up, just a dull glow behind the clouds. Most folks were still in bed or brewing their first pot of coffee. Not me. I sat in my truck for a couple of minutes. Didn't rush. I knew who I'd see in there. I checked the gym's app the night before, saw that Caleb had reserved a bench in the free weight section like he always did. Same time slot he liked to post about. Chasing gains, he called it. The building buzzed with that artificial hum when I walked in. The fluorescent lights, the soft clank of metal plates, the low thump of a playlist somebody in their 20s thought was motivational. The guy at the front desk barely looked up. He just waved, recognizing me from my years of coming in before life got too busy. I didn't waste time warming up. Didn't stretch, didn't jog, didn't even change out of my boots. Just walked straight across the floor, past the cardio machines, the squat racks, and toward the far end of the gym. He was there. Alone. Caleb was benching with a 45 on each side, maybe trying to look casual about it. He had his earbuds in, hood up, but I knew he saw me walking over. His rep started to slow, then stop. He racked the bar and sat up, wiping sweat off his face with a towel like it was just any other day. I didn't give him a chance to speak first. I stepped right up to him, close enough he had to tilt his head back to meet my eyes. "You enjoy wrecking homes, or is mine just your warm-up?" He blinked, caught off guard, then gave this nervous little chuckle like he thought it was a joke. That's when I knew he wasn't half as brave without a phone in his hand or someone else's wife whispering in his ear. I didn't laugh. I reached out and put my hand right in the center of his chest, slow, deliberate. Not a slap, not a punch, just pressure. Solid, steady pressure. He flinched, tried to lean back but couldn't. I pressed harder, like I was holding a barbell against his ribcage. I watched his eyes shift, first to the sides, like maybe someone would step in, then back to me. I wanted him to feel it. Not just the weight, but the control. That I was choosing not to take it further. He raised both hands, still trying to laugh it off. "Hey man, let's be cool here. All right? I don't want trouble." I leaned down until my mouth was a foot from his ear. "You already found it," I said. "Next time I see you near her, you won't walk away with all your teeth." He tensed, like he might try to shove me off. I didn't budge. I stared him down until I felt his chest stutter beneath my palm. That's when the manager showed up. Big guy. Name tag said Lou. I'd seen him around before, usually too busy wiping down equipment or fixing some treadmill belt to care about anything else. But Lou must have noticed the tension, because he rushed over with his hands out, voice raised just enough to snap the silence. Hey, what's going on here?" I stepped back on my own. No rush, no guilt. Just gave Caleb a little pat on the shoulder like you might give a dog you didn't trust. "Nothing," I said, looking Lou in the eye. "Just clearing up a misunderstanding." Lou didn't press. He just nodded and told Caleb to take a break for a bit. Caleb didn't argue. He stood up, towel still clutched in his hand like he wasn't sure what to do with it anymore. I walked off and headed for the locker room. Didn't say another word. I didn't need to. The people nearby, few as they were, had seen enough. Nobody said anything to me, but I felt their eyes on my back. Felt the weight of that moment settling in. Back in the locker room, I splashed cold water on my face, looked in the mirror, and saw a man I didn't quite recognize. Not because I was ashamed, because I wasn't. I was just done. Done wondering what to do. Done questioning myself. Done trying to carry something that didn't belong to me. By the time I left, Caleb was gone. And the way I saw it, neither did I. Not in that gym. Not in that life. Not beside a woman who could smile at me one minute and kiss another man the next. The house was quiet when I pulled into the driveway. Rachel's car wasn't there. She was still at work, probably on her second round of emails and sipping one of those iced green teas she always claimed helped her focus. I knew I had maybe 2 hours before she came home. That was enough. I sat in the truck for a minute, engine idling, my hand resting on the gearshift. The house looked the same as it always had, shutters a little crooked from last winter's storms, porch light with the motion sensor that flickers even when it's calm. Same flower bed I built her under the kitchen window. It all looked normal, but nothing felt normal anymore. I turned off the ignition, grabbed the duffel bag from the back seat, and walked up the steps. When I stepped inside, everything smelled faintly like lemon cleaner. She must have wiped down the counters before heading out. A candle burned low on the stove, one of those lavender ones she liked. The place felt clean, lived in, warm. That was the hardest part. You don't expect betrayal to smell like home. I went straight to the bedroom. First thing I packed was my clothes. Not all of them, just what I needed. I wasn't trying to make a scene. A couple of jeans, boots, work shirts, my hunting jacket, and the watch my dad left me. I moved carefully, quietly, like a man sneaking out of someone else's life. From the closet, I grabbed my lockbox. Inside was everything important: passports, copies of insurance, title to the truck, that old thumb drive full of saved photos. I left the ones of us as a couple. No point keeping ghosts. In the bottom drawer of my dresser, I had a small fireproof pouch where I'd already stashed the evidence, the PI's photos, the text screenshots, printed and clipped, clean as a whistle. I zipped it all into the duffel and moved on. Next stop was the hallway safe. We had a basic wall-mounted one behind a canvas of a mountain lake. Her pic. She said it looked calming. Inside was the emergency cash we kept, a few documents, and the ring box I hadn't opened since our 5th anniversary. I took the money, left the ring box. I didn't need that anymore. I grabbed the paperwork next, copies of the prenup, tax records, savings account info. I didn't take a penny more than what was mine, but I took exactly what I had earned. She'd see that later. Once everything was packed, I walked to the kitchen and stood at the counter. Same granite top we picked out together 4 years ago after I finally won that subcontracting job over in Hampton. I ran my hand over the surface, remembering how she insisted on salt and pepper pattern because it made everything look clean. I pulled a sheet of white paper from the drawer beside the fridge, one of the ones she used to write grocery lists. I took the pen from the mug with the chipped smiley face and stood there for a moment, staring at the blank page. Then I started writing. Rachel, I saw you with him. I let it go for a few days to see if you'd tell me yourself. You didn't. So now you'll find that everything has changed. The savings, the house, the marriage, all gone. Caleb got a warning. You don't. My lawyer will be in touch. T. I folded it in half, crisp and neat, and set it in the middle of the counter. Then I took off my wedding ring. I stared at it for a long moment. It still had the faintest scratch from when I accidentally hit it on a brick wall doing masonry work 2 summers back. I used to rub that scratch like it was some kind of charm. I set the ring right on top of the note. That was it. I took one last walk through the house. Didn't touch anything. Didn't take anything sentimental. Just what I needed to start over. The silence in that house was the kind that presses against your ribs. Even the dogwood tree out back seemed still. At the door, I looked back once. The kitchen light spilled across the tile. The hallway was dark. That was the life I built, and the same one she threw away like it didn't matter. I locked the door behind me. Not gently. Not slowly. Just once. Turn of the key. Click. Done. Then I got into the truck, started the engine, and drove off. No radio. No music. Just the road and my hands on the wheel. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even feel numb. I felt clean. Like stepping out of a room that had been full of smoke for too long. The divorce papers landed on her desk 3 days after I left. I timed it that way. My lawyer, Jack, made sure they were delivered during her lunch hour at work. He called it clean delivery, no surprise at home, no confrontation, just a quiet envelope with a signature request and a cover letter that spelled out, in professional language, why I was done. According to Jack, she didn't even finish her salad. Left the break room red-faced, clutching that manila envelope like it had caught fire in her hands. The call started about an hour later. First it was my cell 10 times in a row. Then voicemail. Then texts. What is this? Can we talk? Please, you can't be serious. Let's fix this. I messed up, I know. But this isn't the way. The tone shifted quick. 1 minute she was apologizing, the next accusing, then back to begging. I didn't answer any of them. I'd said everything I needed to in that note on the kitchen counter. She emailed me at night. Long, winding stuff. Half love letter, half confession. She claimed it wasn't serious, that she didn't think it would go this far, that I was the only one she truly wanted, and so on. I didn't read them all. I printed the first one and handed it to Jack for the record. He called it Exhibit of Admission, and I figured that was good enough. I stayed off social media. Didn't tell anyone where I was, not even my brother. But someone must have tipped off her parents, because 2 days later, her dad called me. It was early in the morning. I was sitting on a friend's back porch, sipping coffee and listening to birds tear apart a feeder when the phone buzzed. The caller ID just said, Frank Miller. I stared at the screen for a solid minute before I answered. Hey, Frank, I said. There was a pause, just breathing, and then he said, in that gruff, seen-it-all tone only men like him have. You did the right thing, son. I'd have done worse. I didn't respond right away. Frank wasn't a guy who handed out praise lightly. Former state cop. Worked homicide most of his career. Wore a flat-top haircut like he was still in uniform. He taught me how to use a grill without burning the edges. Always called me son, even when Rachel and I were just dating. That man helped me build the fence around our old place with his own tools and refused gas money for the trip. Thank you, I finally said. I didn't want it to come to this. He exhaled through the phone. We didn't raise her to lie. And we sure as hell didn't raise her to cheat behind the back of a man who gave her everything. It was quiet after that. Just the hum of wind in the speaker. Then he said something that landed like a punch to the chest. She lost a damn good man. I hope she realizes that. I thanked him again, promised I'd stay safe, and we hung up. A few hours later, her mom called too. Diane's voice cracked before she even got my name out. Oh, sweetheart, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I don't know what to say. There was real hurt in her voice. Not just sadness, but a kind of mourning, like someone had died. I guess in a way, something had. I didn't say much, just that I appreciated her kindness and that I wish things had gone differently. She told me she had cried for hours after Rachel confessed everything. Said she wished I'd been their son instead. That hit harder than I expected. I'd always liked Diane. She had that warm, Midwestern softness to her, always made too much food and insisted you take leftovers. You were the best thing that ever happened to her, she said. After that, they stopped talking to Rachel. I know because she started texting me about that too. They won't even return my calls. My dad won't look at me. You turned them against me. But I hadn't turned to anyone. She did that all on her own. You can only fake it for so long before the mask falls off. They didn't speak for weeks. Missed her birthday. Skipped their usual Sunday dinners. Diane told a mutual friend they were taking time to process. Truth was, they were grieving something. Same as me. Not just the marriage, but the daughter they thought they raised. I didn't vanish overnight. It just felt that way to everyone else. Truth is, after I walked out of that house and locked the door behind me, I didn't drive off into the sunset. I didn't head straight north like I do now when I retell the story. That part came later. First, I drove west 2 towns over to a roadside motel tucked behind a closed-down barbecue joint. The kind of place with rusty room keys and cigarette burns on the nightstand. Room 7. I remember the number because the door's stuck, and you had to lift the handle just right to get it open. I stayed there 3 nights. Not because I didn't have a plan, because I wanted to breathe before I started it. During the day, I sat in the corner booth of the diner across the parking lot. Ordered the same thing each time: black coffee, bacon crisp, eggs over hard. The waitress asked my name. I gave her my middle one. She didn't push. I kept my phone off except when I needed to check messages from Jack, my lawyer. He told me Rachel had already called his office 4 times. Left voicemails that swung from apologetic to furious to pleading. I told him to keep the line cold and let her wear herself out. Each night, I went back to the motel, shut the curtains, and laid on that stiff mattress staring at the cracked ceiling tiles. It was quiet out there. Too quiet sometimes. The hum of the mini fridge became a kind of company. I thought a lot during those hours. About how I'd spent nearly a decade building a life that turned out to be smoke. About how many things I overlooked: the late returns from the gym, the phone flip screen down, the sudden taste for girl weekends. I wasn't stupid. Just in love. And that can make a man damn blind. On the 3rd morning, I folded the motel blanket neatly, wiped down the counter like I was never there, and walked out without saying a word to the clerk behind the front desk. That's when I started driving north. Not in a hurry. Not running. I took back roads. No interstates. No GPS. Just me, the map in my glove box, and a full tank of gas. I passed farms and silos, slow rivers and faded towns where the gas stations still had manual signs out front. I stopped when I needed to. Slept once in a rest area with my seat tilted back and my coat pulled over my face. Somewhere around the state line, I crossed a bridge I'd never seen before, narrow and made of old stone. That's when I decided I was far enough. That's where I started looking for a place to land. It didn't take long. A few miles from the bridge sat a town you won't find on most maps. Small enough to feel invisible. Big enough to have what I needed: a used truck lot, a bait shop, and a diner that still served homemade pie. I found a cabin for rent on the edge of town, just shy of a half-acre lot. Tin roof, wood stove, porch with a view of a tree line thick with pines. The landlord asked for first and last month in cash. I paid it on the spot. I kept the name I gave the waitress at the diner, my middle name, and told folks I was coming off a rough year. That was all they needed. Small-town people don't pry much if you carry yourself right, show up on time, and don't make a mess. I changed my number. Jack handled closing out the rest. The accounts. The tax records. The business filings. Everything. By the end of the month, my old life was a trail of legal receipts and disconnected numbers. Even my brother didn't know where I'd gone. He tried. Called Jack. Asked around. But I didn't want sympathy. Didn't want some let's talk it through nonsense. I just wanted space. And silence. And I got both. When people back home asked where I went, the answers were always secondhand. A guess here. A rumor there. Some said I took off to start a new business. Others figured I cracked and headed west. But most folks just shrugged and said, "He's gone." And they weren't wrong. Because the man I used to be, he was. They say the dust settles eventually. I've learned that's not really true. The dust just moves. Shifts. Finds new places to cling to. Rachel kept the house, but just barely. That place looked a lot different when it wasn't propped up by my labor, my paycheck, and my pride. The mortgage alone was like a millstone tied around her neck. I heard through Jack that she'd tried to refinance. Her credit wasn't what she thought it was. Turns out, having your name show up in court documents tied to infidelity doesn't sit well with lenders in a conservative county. She couldn't afford the cleaner anymore, or the landscaper I used to pay cash on the side. I imagined the lawn growing wild, weeds crawling up the fence I built with my own hands, paint on the porch chipping with every change in weather. The roses under the kitchen window probably died. She never liked dirt under her nails. Her car broke down once that winter. I only know because she sent me an email, of all things, asking if I could point her in the right direction for a reliable mechanic. I didn't answer. Let her use Google like everyone else. Caleb didn't last much longer either. After the blow-up, his job let him go. Something about behavior unbecoming, though officially it was labeled a restructuring. I didn't even have to lift a finger for that. Apparently, once word got around the gym about who he was and what he'd done, nobody wanted to train with him. His clients dropped off, one by one. Eventually, the owner pulled him aside and said it was best he moved on. He packed up and moved across the state a month later. Tried to start fresh, I suppose. But you can't outrun reputation. It always rides in the back seat, quiet until someone recognizes your face in the checkout line. His wife, yeah, Caleb had a wife, filed for divorce. Same week I did. She moved out and left him with nothing but a mattress on the floor and a few frozen dinners in the freezer. Poetic, really. As for Rachel, her circle shrank fast. Friends she used to host wine nights with suddenly had excuses. People stopped liking her posts. Stopped inviting her to couples' dinners. That crowd loved appearances. And nothing ruins appearances like being publicly abandoned by a man who kept his mouth shut and his hands clean. Until the day he didn't. Me? I came out of the fire with less ash on me than she expected. Jack was surgical. Cold as steel and twice as sharp. He filed everything like clockwork, pushed every advantage, used every clause buried in our prenup. That prenup she used to call just a formality? Turned out it was my insurance policy. I got most of the savings. My retirement stayed untouched. We had a few joint business interests, a small real estate holding, some stock we invested in together. Jack cut her out of all of it. Not maliciously. Just methodically. Her lawyer tried to argue, emotional strain, tried to twist the facts, said I was calculating. Jack simply raised his hand and slid the stack of evidence across the table, photos, messages, dates, the note I left. Even the voicemail where she cried and said, I ruined everything. I know that now. You can't argue against your own voice. Adultery's not a good bargaining chip. Not in our state. Especially when your ex-spouse walks into court quiet, prepared, and clean-shaven in a navy blue jacket that says, I didn't come here to fight, I came to win. The judge didn't even hesitate. Rachel cried when the ruling was read. I didn't. I signed the last of the paperwork with a pen I brought myself. Black ink. Clean lines. That was the end of it. Or at least, the legal end. I never went back. Never once drove past the house. Didn't check her social pages. Didn't ask around. What was there to look at? A woman surrounded by fading wallpaper and a memory of a man she thought she could lie to forever? I walked away with what mattered. My dignity. My future. And the knowledge that when it counted, I stood tall and let her sink under the weight of her own choices. Some people call that justice. I just call it balance. It was a quiet morning. Late spring, cool breeze, pine needles soft underfoot. I was halfway through my usual trail walk, out past the bend where the lake breaks into that small clearing with the fallen tree that looks like a bridge no one trusts. That place had become something like a church to me. I'd walk there just to breathe. No noise. No people. No past. I had a thermos of coffee in my hand and my jacket unzipped just enough to feel the air on my chest. The birds were going about their business, squirrels chasing each other up trees, the smell of wet earth rising after the previous night's rain. I thought it was just another quiet day in a town where nobody knew who I used to be. Then I saw her, standing by the side of the trail near the edge of the trees, like some ghost who never quite figured out how to rest. Rachel. She looked different. Not in a way that's easy to explain. Same eyes, same hair, though now pulled back like she hadn't cared much to brush it. Her face was thinner, the kind of tired that doesn't come from missing sleep but from missing peace. Her clothes looked clean but wrinkled, like she'd been living out of a suitcase or riding in her car for hours. She wore makeup, just enough to pretend things were okay, but it couldn't hide what was underneath. Her guilt clung to her skin like fog. For a second, I thought about walking right past her, pretending she was a stranger asking for directions. But my feet stopped. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was something else. I just stood there, waiting. She opened her mouth, and before the first word came out, her eyes filled. Her breath hitched. Then she dropped her gaze and took a shaky step forward. "I found you," she whispered. I didn't answer. She took another step. Her voice cracked. "Please, just listen. Just for a minute." I gave her a nod. Not out of mercy. Just to let her speak her piece. She started talking fast, like if she didn't say it all now, it might never come out again. "I made a mistake. A huge one. I know I did. I ruined everything. I ruined us. I've lost it all. My job, my parents won't even look me in the eye anymore. I don't go to the gym. I don't talk to anyone. You were," she stopped, swallowed hard, "you were the best thing that ever happened to me. I see that now. Too late, I know. But I had to tell you." Tears ran down her face. She didn't wipe them. "I just want a chance. One chance. To make it right. I don't expect you to forget. I just want to try." She was shaking. Whether from nerves or cold, I couldn't say. But she looked small, like life had pressed her into the shape of her own regret. I stared at her for a long while. Let her cry. Let her feel every second of the silence between us. Then I spoke. "The man you married?" I said, voice calm as the water behind her. "He died the day you kissed another man while still wearing his ring." She gasped a little, like she thought I'd at least yell or raise my voice. But I didn't. I wasn't angry. I was done. I stepped forward. Her eyes lit up like maybe, just maybe, I changed my mind. But I walked past her, right up the trail, toward the cabin. I stopped once, just at the porch steps, and looked back. She hadn't moved. Just stood there, broken in the trees. Her arms hanging by her sides, tears still falling. Then I turned the knob, and I shut the door. Didn't slam it. Didn't lock it dramatically. Just closed it behind me with a soft click that sounded louder than thunder. Inside, the air was still warm. My coffee was still hot. The fire in the wood stove still crackled low. And I sat down in my chair, looked out the window, and breathed. She might have found me, but that didn't mean she got to keep me. Share your thoughts in the comments. What would you have written in the goodbye note if it were you? If you liked the story, subscribe to the channel and give us a like.